Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. All right, Jane and Vince, are you unmuted? All right, there we go. I can hear you. Are you all set?
All right, good. Yeah, I just saw the icon down below. We're clear. Well, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. As Rabbi has said, the IRD has put together a program where we have invited some alumni from Kol Ami, children, young adults now, who grew up in interfaith families. And they are going to share some of their perspectives with us on growing up in at Kol Ami and in the Jewish faith, and their experiences and their feelings, about that. Tonight we're happy to have 4 young adults. Our daughter, Sarah Pace, Arin Blower, Arin Edelstein, and Sterling
Buchanan Jacobs.
Sterling Buchanan Jacobs. Yes. Thank you. Good. We don't have a particular order for who should start off the discussion. So any volunteers, we'll be happy to take you.
I'm happy to start.
Sarah Pace.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Well, I hope you are all staying safe and healthy during this very tumultuous time. If you don't know me, my name is Sarah Pace, and you know by now that I am the daughter of Vincent and Jane Pace, and I am the sister to Greg and Julia Pace, who are also joining us on this Zoom Shabbat. Hey guys. And I currently live in Berkeley, California, where I'm an attorney. I practice law at a firm in San Francisco. So whoever had the Golden Gate Bridge up, respect. As your background, I like that. I just want to give a special shout out to my parents for coordinating this and making the start time a little bit later so that I could join more easily from the West Coast. Thank you. So growing up, my family's involvement at Kol Ami was a very significant part of my life. I attended Hebrew school there from first grade all the way through confirmation. I even taught kindergarten at Kol Ami for a year before I went off to college. My brother, my sister, my mother, and I were all b'nai mitzvah with Rabbi Holin at Kol Ami. So having said all this, Kol Ami certainly shaped my childhood and my identity as a Jewish person. Kol Ami also showed me that Judaism does not have to be a one-size-fits-all religion. It made interfaith families like mine feel welcome. My mom is from an Ashkenazi Jewish family, and my dad is from an Italian Catholic family. They decided before my siblings and I were born that they were going to raise us in the Jewish faith. I know they did not come to that decision lightly. I am grateful they chose and that they had a plan for our family. I think many of my friends from interfaith families growing up did not really have a strong sense of their faith because their families did not choose. Of course, parents must do what they think is best, but personally, I am grateful that my parents made that choice for us when we were young. That being said, my mom and dad struck the important but delicate balance of raising me to be proud of my Jewish identity while also being proud of my interfaith identity. They were able to teach me the value of pluralism and open-mindedness by living it. One of the ways that they accomplished this was by never allowing me to feel as though I was choosing between them. My parents raised us in the Jewish faith together. My dad learned the prayers and took a sincere interest in my Jewish education. I remember when I was in first grade, my class was decorating the classroom for the winter holidays, and my teacher made the students choose. They could decorate either a candy cane or a dreidel, but not both. I went home in tears that day because I felt as though I was being forced to choose between my mother and my father. In response, my mom quickly scheduled a conference with my teacher to make sure that she understood the gravity of what she was asking students like me to do. In the end, I was able to decorate both a candy cane and a dreidel, and nothing like that ever happened again. My parents had a plan that my siblings and I were able to join my paternal grandparents for Christmas every year. And when Hanukkah and Christmas overlapped, we would bring our Hanukkah to my grandparents' house, and it would be a joyous fusion of holiday traditions. I not only remained active in the Jewish community through college, I went to Brandeis, just like Rabbi, but I also explored my Italian heritage. I ended up completing a major in Italian studies in college and lived in Italy for a semester. While there were times when people questioned my belonging as a member of the Jewish community, calling me in sometimes a derogatory way, half Jewish and the like, I had such a strong Jewish identity instilled in me, coupled with my pride in being from an interfaith family, that I was able to shake it off and claim my place in various Jewish communities and even go on to lead one while I was in law school. Being raised interfaith, I saw daily how much value there is in people from different backgrounds coming together. This past Yom Kippur, I hosted a break fast where my guests were of all different faiths and backgrounds. It was a very meaningful evening. Our world is changing. There are more interfaith and interracial couples today than ever before. As my boyfriend, who is not Jewish, and I plan a future together, I have a clear idea of what that can look like for us and our family, and I have my parents to thank for that. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you,
That was
Claire.
wonderful. Who's ready to go next?
I can go.
Wonderful. Thank you, Arin.
Yeah, so for me, being interfaith hasn't really been like a huge part of my identity at all. Like ever since I was young, it's been clear that I was Jewish. Honestly, a lot of people probably wouldn't even know my dad wasn't Jewish because he's been such an active member of the synagogue. I went to Kol Ami and Camp Harlem. For me, the only difference has been every year we would visit his family in England and we'd celebrate Christmas. But it wasn't really religious ever because they never went to church, but I always felt included. They'd give me like a little stocking and presents, which was always really nice. So yeah, that's about it. Thanks.
You.
Right, who's ready to go next?
I can go next.
Wonderful.
Hi, everyone. I'm Arin Edelstein. My parents are Betsy McKinstry and Joel Edelstein. If you don't know me, that you probably know them. We've been members of Kol Ami for about 15 years. I'm 22 now. I'm in my 4th year at NYU. And we joined Kol Ami around 15 years ago. I was about 8 years old, I think, and many of my friends who also came from interfaith families, they were starting to go to Hebrew school and learn about being Jewish. And to myself, I thought, oh, I'm Jewish, I should learn about being Jewish. Let's do that, parents. And apparently this was a big surprise to them. Because up to that point, we had kind of been blissfully unaffiliated. We did Christmas with the McKinstries, we did Hanukkah with the Edelsteins. We also did Christmas with the Edelsteins because of other interfaith marriage situations. We also did Passover with certain McKinstries because of interfaith marriage situations. It was a big mishmash, and I have a lot of really pleasant memories surrounding those holidays with various parts of my family. So if it wasn't evident, or if you didn't already know, my mom's side of the family is Protestant and my dad's side is the Jewish side of our family. So yeah, when I was 8, we started looking for a synagogue to join. And I didn't know this at the time, but a lot of research went into this selection process because it was a big priority that we find a congregation that would not only tolerate our interfaith family, but be welcoming and embracing of my mom and of me, especially. So we went to a service that Kol Ami held. This was back before we had a building. This was, I think the service that we went to was at Gratz College in Elkins Park. And we ended up joining the synagogue, of course, and from 3rd grade through, I believe, 11th grade, I attended classes at Kol Ami Religious School, first preparing for my bat mitzvah, which I had at Kol Ami, of course, and then confirmation, and then in the Lamed program after confirmation, which was run by David Monblatt at the time. So at the beginning, I imagine that it might have seemed like a phase, like, oh, Arin's interested in learning about being Jewish. Cool. Well, it wasn't a phase. Obviously, I'm here and we're here. And so throughout the many years of my education at Kol Ami and our participation in services and my parents' participation in the Interfaith Relationship Dialogue and in the choir with Rebecca, my mom was so supportive of my exploration of my Jewish identity. Some other people were not so supportive, and I'm sure those of us who are children of interfaith families, it's a sore point when someone says, oh, you're not fully Jewish, or you're half. What does that even mean? Because you can't be half of something. You are Jewish if you identify as Jewish, in my opinion, and in my experience. So when I got to college, when I came to NYU, at the beginning of my sophomore year, I really started to make a home for myself at the Bronfman Center for Jewish Student Life at NYU. That is the sort of center of Jewish student life. It houses Hillel and a number of other organizations on campus. And as I became more involved and as I took on more leadership roles on campus, I made the decision very early on not to sort of closet myself as coming from an interfaith family. I was very open that I was a patrilineal Jew, because I had had experiences before where people found out that it was my mother who wasn't Jewish, and suddenly my Jewish identity was not valid to them. But luckily, that has not been my experience at NYU. I've been embraced, from it, whether it be the Reform Minyan, the traditional egalitarian Minyan that I'm the president of now, or from the various Orthodox communities on campus. I have been nothing but embraced and validated in all of my identities, which has been a really beautiful experience for me. So when I look back on growing up at Kol Ami, that initial, I know I say the word that, I know I've been saying that it was embraced a lot. I've been saying that word a lot, but it truly was. And my mom running the Purim spiel with the religious school for a few years, and both of my parents being in the choir, and my involvement with the children's choir, it was all a really beautiful way of knitting together our interfaith family. And I think that as I've explored my own preferences for observance in college and everything, it was a really, oh, I'm getting verklempt a little bit, I'm so sorry. It was a really good foundation to work with, that I didn't have to feel ashamed, or I didn't have to feel guilty about half of my family and half of my heritage. I I've come to embrace that my Jewish identity is not despite of my coming from an interfaith family, which sometimes it can feel the opposite. And I'm sure those of you who have similar experiences that might resonate with you. One time, I think I was a sophomore or maybe a junior. I was a junior at NYU. I had been president of the traditional egalitarian Minyan on campus for a few months. And I was asked to be on a panel of students at the local Chabad house. A delegation from Israel came to Manhattan and was going to see where their funding was going in a few colleges. And I took the opportunity to let them know that I am a patrilineal Jew and I come from an interfaith family, and I was this established, I guess, student leader in Jewish life on campus. And afterward, I had a number of people come up to me with so many questions, like, how did you find the strength to like overcome? And I had to set them straight, because it wasn't a thing to overcome, and it wasn't a thing, you know, that I was Jewish despite or whatever. Some people might say that those of us who come from interfaith families who are pursuing, you know, living Jewishly as an adult, some people might say it's an anomaly. I disagree. I'm a person. I'm not an anomaly. And I think that those of us who do live Jewishly, who come from interfaith families, it's not despite, but it's because of. And, you know, my memories celebrating Christmas with my mom's side of the family, or going to church with my mom's parents for Easter, you know, it's not a thing that's separate from my Jewish identity. Of course, I don't feel super comfy in a church because I don't identify as Christian, but these family traditions are super important to me. And I've been working on finding a way to be at peace with all of these coexisting factors that many people might find to be in opposition to each other. But I really like how our family looks, and I like our traditions, and I'm excited to figure out, as I continue to age and become more of an independent adult, I'm excited to figure out what I get to carry on myself in my own home as a Jewish adult from an interfaith family. Yes.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. You're getting some spirit fingers on the call. Is Sterling here? I see his mom.
Did you? No, did you? Oh.
There we go. Oh, there you are. Yay.
I couldn't figure out how to unmute. Sorry.
I was looking for you to unmute you. Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sterling, Linda's and Jeffrey's son. I grew up in an interfaith family. Little different from the other ones. We didn't really have Christmas or anything. Or we did have Christmas, but we didn't celebrate it. Like, we didn't really go to church or anything like that. The only time I've ever been to church was with friends outside of my family. So it's slightly different. We've been very involved at Kol Ami since its beginning, I guess. We've been members since before I can remember. Did kindergarten, got confirmed, and then did Lamed program after that with David, which was great.
And your bar mitzvah.
Got bar mitzvahed as well. Forgot about that. Also, went to a Jewish sports camp called 6 Points. Was pretty involved there. Was a counselor for a year. So in terms of interfaith families, I guess we're more Jewish. We're not really super interfaith. I mean, we get Christmas, but it's not like really like that part of the religion. It's more like the celebration of it. So it's not really, I wouldn't really say like interfaith is the correct terminology to use, I guess. I think we're a Jewish family, and our father happens to be Christian by birth, I guess, but he goes to Kol Ami just as much as, hell of a lot more than I do, just as much as my mom does. So, you know, I think Jewish is the more correct term. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Cool. It's so wonderful. I'm internally spirit fingering, yes. It's so wonderful to hear everybody speak. It says so much about each of you. It says so much about Kol Ami, and so much about your families, how you've been able to navigate being part of an interfaith family, and to be so, regardless of background, to be so passionate about being Jewish and being part of a Jewish community. That's really a gift to us. It's a gift your parents gave us, and it's a gift that you're giving us in being proud Jews in the next generation. What we're going to do now is, if you have questions for either all or any of our panelists, you can type them in the chat box. We'll give everybody a minute.
You can mute us again.
Mm-hmm.
David Hyman asks, how can we be supportive of you? So if you want to take turns, let's go backwards. If we want to do Sterling, Arin, Sarah. And I'm going to tack on to David's question because I know this is partially what he's thinking because I can read David's mind. Not even just as children of interfaith families, but as young adult Jews making your way in the world, some coming into college, some going out of college, some in the workforce. This is a hard group to serve. We don't have a lot of you in our congregation currently, except as alumni. What do you need in your Jewish life now? And how can we give it to you?
Oh, okay. I think to answer the first question is just being accepting and supportive in general is a great way to get more people involved in the Jewish community, especially younger people who aren't really exactly sure about their religion and about how they feel about Judaism in general. And they know like they're Jewish, but they don't really know what that means to them. And so just being accepting and supportive, especially of the younger generation who aren't really sure of their place.
Thank you. Arin?
Oh, different Arin.
Arin, NYU.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Sterling just said. I think that tools for learning and for education are the most important tool for support. I constantly have questions about, things that seem like rules to me about being observant that I don't know, that I'm not familiar with, because maybe they weren't things that I grew up with, or maybe just, I don't know. I think that education is the most important, most supportive thing that you can do.
Wonderful.
Nice.
Arin, soon to be Michigan, Arin.
Yes. So yeah, I don't know. I think Kol Ami has always been very supportive, and I mean, even though like being interfaith has like never really been something that like differentiated me that much, like it was definitely not something here. So I mean, like that's a good, I think, attitude to have. But yeah, just like, I mean, with what Arin said earlier about like not singling people out as half Jewish, like that's never a fun thing when people like, oh, so you're half Jewish. And at this point, it gets to the point where you don't even like, I don't even respond anymore, but yeah, so that's annoying.
Yeah. For people who wanted an example of a microaggression, that's a microaggression. Sarah, you want to finish us off?
Sure. So I think there's like a few like concrete things that a synagogue could do. And I know that Kol Ami is doing some of these already. Like one is allowing Jewish family members to be on the bima. That's not something that's a given at every synagogue. And like the fact that my dad was able to make an aliyah at my bat mitzvah and stand on the bima with me is really, really important. Even today, like as a 28-year-old looking back when I was 13. Another thing is the willingness to marry an interfaith couple. And I apologize, Rabbi, we haven't spoken offline about this, but I think that is also something that, I mean, as I look at my future, it's really important to me that that rabbis are willing to do that. And and then I would say, this is maybe more general, but when you get out of college and there's no more Hillel or Chabad or like the egalitarian Jewish minyan at your disposal, you just have to try and find services in your community, and they can be very pricey. And I'm like still kind of struggling with that. I haven't been able to find a shul out here, or really even like a minyan that like is egalitarian, is reform, sings the songs that I'm familiar with, and is also at a price that I'm able to kind of afford. Like I think High Holy Day services in San Francisco were like $90 per service, And so I think coming up with,
and that's probably an affordable synagogue, by the way.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you're right. Yeah, 90 was the cheapest I could find. Correct. So I guess just kind of like thinking of what like young adult Jews who are not in college, like what we need like accessibility to services at like and like I'm willing to donate and like I'm willing to pay, but it's just, it can't be, you know, completely like an astronomical price. Yeah, and then I guess just like, I don't know, I wish that there were more just kind of young adults, like community-based Jewish organizations out there, but making sure that you're advertising and getting the word out, all that's really important. But yeah, just my thoughts.
And that's actually one of the things that's exciting about this strange time is we actually just started today conversations about how we'll incorporate this technology when hopefully, God willing, this period is over. And it might be, part of that might be how we are able to engage people who are not able to walk through the door at this point, but we also need to talk about the financial barriers. So thank you for bringing that up. Okay, I'm gonna actually throw out, oh no, I want to give this question its own time. So John asks, did any of the panelists want their non-Jewish parent to convert? And I want to just address, because they put non-Jewish in quotes. So apparently the appropriate term is person from another faith background, which can be, because we want to use positive language, that can be a bit of a mouthful. So we do sometimes use non-Jewish. But we're thinking of this as a person who comes from another background, often someone who participates in a Jewish family, but maybe hasn't become officially Jewish. So he asks, did any of them want their non-Jewish parent from another faith background to convert? And were there discussions on that question? So if anyone has had that conversation with their parent from another faith, if you want to bring that, if you want to go first, I don't know if anyone's had that discussion. Okay, Arin, you want to start us off?
Yeah. I think when I was in high school, I first started to become aware of that factor, of the conversion factor, and, you know, would things be different, would things not be different, etc. And my mom and I did have a few conversations about that, but I think, like, as a gut response, maybe I was a little bit upset, you know, after someone probably called me not really Jewish or something, and probably my teenage angry reaction was, Mom, why didn't you just convert? But of course, that's not the whole story. And I, you know, talking to my mom, like I don't think my mom identifies as specifically Christian at this point. Mom, you can chime in and correct me though. But also my mom doesn't identify specifically as Jewish, and my mom is very comfortable where she is in our synagogue and in our community. And I'm very comfortable with where my mom is at this point. And I like our family the way it is. But it definitely was something for me to struggle with for a few years, I think.
All right. Did any of our other panelists have that experience of that being an issue or a conversation that you had?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely asked my dad. I think it was more when I was younger, because like I don't even know that I like really ever knew he was Christian. Like obviously he was, but like not in like an active sense, you know, because as I said, like even his family, none of them go to church, so it's not like I really saw like an active like Christian like members of my family. So I was just like, what? I kind of asked him like, do you like, why aren't you Jewish? And he just like, he said that like, I mean, that it wasn't like what he really wanted to do, I think, but that, I mean, he's on the board, he's an active member of Kol Ami, so it never really mattered to me. And honestly, I think it's been actually nice having his perspective, because I think that, I mean, there's definitely been some things that he's been able to teach me about how he grew up like religiously, that I think he was actually more religious when he was younger, and that's been interesting. So yeah.
Wonderful. And Sarah, did you have something you wanted to share?
Oh, I mean, I actually, I can just echo a lot of that. I think, my dad's parents, my paternal grandparents, who are no longer with us, but they were like very devout Catholics. And I remember they had like a pretty sizable wooden cross over their bed. And my dad, Dad, feel free to chime in. I do feel a little weird speaking for you, but he grew up going to seminary school for several years, which is like kind of the pathway to priesthood. And then he left when he realized that that was not his future. I think your senior year of high school. That is all to say that he really knew the Bible very well. He knew the Old Testament like better than anyone in my family. And I remember like this conversation with him in the car about how, would you ever consider like converting? Like, do you see yourself as a Catholic now, or do you see yourself as a Jewish person? Because he had long kind of been a little bit removed from the Catholic Church. And I think, I don't know, I mean, I remember he said that like, he feels like he's very much a part of the Jewish community, and therefore he doesn't really feel the need to take the step and convert. And then I think that like, his relationship with organized religion generally was kind of, complicated, which was why, but I guess that is all to say that, it was just kind of like a seamless sort of upbringing, in the sense that he like brought so much to the table with all this knowledge of like the 5 books and more. So I was just always grateful for that. Yeah.
Wonderful. Sterling, did you have anything to add on that point? Okay, so we'll go on to the next one. So I think I'm gonna put these questions together just in the interest of time. So Bill asks, how important was Jewish life as a factor in your college selection? Why or why not? I know actually so far we've all been in colleges that were that have a very sizable Jewish life. And then Joel asks, says, Sarah already touched on this, but what has been your family and Kol Ami, including education experience, influence on what kind of community you'll look for in your coming years? So I think you can actually answer those questions together. What were you looking for in choosing a college? What are you looking for in choosing a community for yourself as an adult? Well, I'm actually going to make Arin go first because he just chose his college, so you have it fresh in your mind.
Yeah, so I think at first that was a big factor, like what is the Jewish life at all the schools that I'm looking at. But honestly, the more my college search went on, like none of the schools I was looking at really had an issue with like not having Jewish life. So it kind of became like I just kind of moved past that as one of my major things, because like, I mean, they're all like, it's a very important thing for me to have as a community, but like, I think all the places I was looking at did have that. Like I chose Michigan, and there's like 26,000 people total there. So like I think there's like a couple thousand Jewish people, maybe 1,000. Either way, it's like, yeah. And something I considered was like, at first was like what my thoughts were towards BDS on campus. Because like that's something that makes me somewhat uncomfortable, and not something I strongly do not support. But
you wouldn't want to be a pastor.
right. But so like I kind of like that's became not my biggest priority, because I feel like wherever I go, I'm going to support Israel, and I'm going to find a community that also does that. Like actually this past summer at my summer camp, so my one of my counselors, she was at Princeton, and she said they had a pretty active BDS, but she was one of the leaders of this organization that was pro-Israel. And they like combated some of the messaging on that. And I just thought that was really cool. And that like kind of changed my perspective at like the way I could look at it and be an active part of the community, like, and change it the way I want to be in college. So yeah.
Thank you. Arin, do you want to go next?
No, give it.
Or Sterling, you want to go next?
I can go next.
Yes, great.
In terms of when I chose my college, I didn't really consider whether or not they had a large Jewish population that much, but there were definitely certain schools that I would never have considered, probably because they were in a certain area that I would have considered less friendly to Jewish people. So it played a small part in my decision, but I wouldn't say I really made a decision based on that.
Okay, thank you. And Arin, you're sort of on the cusp because you're simultaneously can talk about what your college choice and what you'd be looking for when you leave college.
Yeah. When I was looking at colleges, I looked at a few colleges in New York City. I, of course, looked at NYU because that's where I am now. But we also toured Fordham, which is in Bronxville, and it is technically Jesuit. I had read that the Jesuit status didn't really play into campus life that much, so we were on a tour in person, and the girl who was giving us a tour was like very involved in her sorority, and was talking about like Christian things on campus and stuff. And we were at some kind of church thing in the center of that campus, and it was me and my mom there. We were on the tour together, and my mom was like, "You got to ask." So I did. I was like, "What? Well, what about people on campus who aren't Christian? What is campus life like in that case?" And she goes, "I think you could probably start a club or something." So I did not go there. I did not pursue that one further. And I looked at a few other schools, and definitely a factor in my deciding on NYU was the fact that it was in Manhattan. It was downtown Manhattan. There's a lot of history there, a lot of Jewish history there. And also a huge Jewish community on campus with like a huge diversity of opinions and practices and everything. That wasn't the deciding factor, but I'm really glad that it factored in because that has definitely been something I've really valued in my time here. And then going forward, I'm really happy that I'm in New York. There's so much history, first of all. And there's so many different opportunities for community building. There's a lot of young adult Jews in the city. At NYU, I currently am the president of a traditional egalitarian minyan, probably most aligned with the conservative movement, but it's not the conservative movement. I don't really know how to describe. That's actually how I met Mitchell here by accident. So knowing people through that, and then people graduating and everything, I can imagine that there's going to be a lot of nice community opportunities with my other young professional friends once I graduate. Yeah, I mean, I've worked at an Orthodox preschool on the Lower East Side. I've babysat for a number of rabbis' kids. I really love it so much. I really do. It's probably one of my favorite parts about being here.
Wonderful. And Sarah, do you want to add anything to what you said before?
Well, I'll just say quickly that so Brandeis, for those who don't know, is like a traditionally Jewish university. It was founded on Jewish values, although it's like not like affiliated with the religion. Like it is like a secular school, but it is 60% Jewish. The idea being that when it was founded in 1948, students who weren't able to get into like nearby schools, like Harvard, for instance, because there were quotas in the number of Jewish people, which was in direct response to anti-Semitism that was occurring at the time. Anyway, they would have a place to go and get equally good education, and that was Brandeis. And so I think at first, actually, that really turned me off when I was looking at schools. I was like, I'm just going to be surrounded by people who are like me. But it ended up being like the best school I got into, and I was like, okay, this will set me up for the future. I'll go here. And I think I really actually truly connected with my Jewish identity when I started there, because it was just like everywhere I went, like the theater groups were run by Hillel. And so we put on like Jewish shows, like, or shows that were written by Jewish playwrights. And then, you know, like if you wanted like there was like, I don't know, 10 different options for your Rosh Hashanah High Holy Day service. And I made all my friends, you know, we wouldn't like party on Friday nights, we would do Shabbat dinners together. And so I think, yeah, in the end, it was more than I ever could have imagined. And it certainly shaped me, the Jewish person I am today. I went to law school at Berkeley, and it's a very different relationship with Judaism there and Israel, which, you know, happy to talk more about in a separate conversation. But I think that was also important because at that point I was put on kind of the off, or I guess on the defense, right? Like I felt like I needed to stand up for my identity and my values when it comes to Israel, which is not something I felt I had to do at Brandeis as much. And so when people ask you questions and make you answer them, and make you think about what it is that you really believe in, that only just makes you like have a stronger faith. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. I think that's all the time that we have for questions, but if anybody wants to give any final thoughts. Well, I realized that I think we did talk about this a little bit at the beginning, but I did want to make sure people knew what IRD was. Interfaith Relationship Dialogue Group is actually part of our charter as a community. It was very important to Rabbi Holin, and it's very important to me and to us. And it is a group that comes together to talk about the joys and challenges of being part of an interfaith family. And we've actually sort of expanded and split, and one of the groups is meeting on Thursday. We now have a group for people who are maybe not in an interfaith relationship themselves, but have interfaith relationships within their family. So people maybe whose children intermarried, or whose sibling intermarried, or parent intermarried, and are navigating having an extended family where not everybody is Jewish, which I think is really true for a lot of us now. And they're meeting on Zoom on Thursday at 7:30, so check your email for that. And also, in the name of resources for all of you, and especially for our young people, I'm posting this again. This is the document that I've made for staying connected Jewishly during the quarantine. It lists a lot of webinars, podcasts, books to read. If you haven't read Sarah Hurwitz's Here All Along, that would be where I would tell you to go first. It's amazing. She's wonderful. And I just want to thank everyone for being here, and for Jane and Vince and the IRD for putting this together, and all of our participants for sharing so openly and articulately what was going on. Yes, big spirit fingers, big jazz hands for everybody. Wonderful. And I want to wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom. I'm going to stop recording now.